Hello everyone, Rurikhan here coming at you with another video, and a lot of you guys have asked me to react to Brian's video on quitting Final Fantasy XIV, and I'm like, why would I react to it if I can just have a conversation with him? How you doing, Brian?
I am doing good, dude. Good morning from Texas right now. So for those of you who want to know our time differences, it's 5:30 in the morning, and you asked me how I do this, and I was like, this is what I would do. This is how I made my content. This is my productive hour. But I've been getting a little bit more sleep now that I've retired from Final Fantasy.
So now the Ginger Prime community is going to be like, so wait a minute, Rurikhan, Brian's quit playing Final Fantasy XIV so he could sleep, so you decided it was a good idea to make him wake up early again to make a video.
I could do this every now and then. Like it's baked into my DNA. My body still wants to kind of get up, but I've been kind of like, no, let's just ease into this, you know?
Yeah, let's just stay in bed. It's very hard once you wake up to actually suppress that and like go back to sleep. At least for me, it's terrible. But anyway.
Oh, me too. Me too.
So one of the things that I found very interesting is that I started thinking back to when I first saw your content, which was like Work to Game before you had all the different Ginger Prime channels and all of this stuff, right? And I used to watch some of those videos even before I got into Final Fantasy XIV because I was always curious about Final Fantasy XIV. And so I would watch you and Chris talk about it and whatnot. And I saw some of your like story summaries after I got started to kind of like in between expansions and stuff like that. So you've done a ton of content for it. But as someone who's spoken to you multiple times and we've done some collabs like in the past, right? I wonder if I was the only person that wasn't surprised. I mean, I'm assuming Chris wasn't surprised either, but there were
Chris
a lot of
wasn't
people that
surprised.
there were a lot of people that appeared surprised that you quit 14.
The reaction was really interesting to see. So I said for anybody who's been paying attention and it's not for Endwalker. Like this is my complaints go rooted all the way into Stormblood from a systems perspective, right? So one of the things when you think about it, it's like Endwalker is such a satisfying end to the saga, right? Like if you want to sit here and say, if like this is a natural exit point, hit that. There's my another alarm. If it's a natural exit point, then yeah, like it feels like a really good time to stop. And my critiques and complaints, while not received well by a portion of the community, when I talk about the things that I wish Final Fantasy XIV did, there's a vast and very supportive Final Fantasy XI community that is all on board with the feedback that I provide. There is a newer, more WoW-based Final Fantasy XIV community that doesn't understand it. And so I've always tried to spend my time to try and educate those players on like why we find these things kind of valuable. And there's not necessarily like a one-to-one trade-off. And there's also, to be completely direct, is like not all of these ideas would actually benefit the community in totality, right? Like there's reasons why WoW is so dominant. There's reasons why that has set a narrative, right? So it's just always that kind of feedback. But there's a lot of the community, when we say the bigger community, that obviously doesn't follow every content creator and every poster and everybody who's got every idea shared. And that's actually, I think, some of the feedback that I've been given over just that video alone. And that video literally directed to the people who are already like informed of it, right? So it's like I think now obviously that it's gone wider than I expected and really hoped, because I really don't care for all that extra attention, but I prepared for it in a way because I kind of had I pre-gamed a lot of this. So when people ask me like, how's the reception been? Well, like on my channel, insanely positive, because I've created a kind of a set of rules that Final Fantasy Andes tend to speak in certain terms, and all that just gets filtered right out of my feed. So I don't like, in terms of that, I've been hearing of obviously frustration. I've heard of like, apparently I don't know if trending's the right word, but over on Reddit and then over on even on the official forums, threads, which was funny because I didn't build my filters over on my New World channel. and some of the Andes have kind of found that channel now.
Oh no.
And well, no, it doesn't bother me because I haven't even replied to him. I've just been laughing at the other people's replies to the Andes. One person says, "Who cares what this guy thinks?" And then someone's like, "There's a 300-page thread on the official forums. Apparently, somebody cares." And I like it wasn't even me doing that because I'm not going and keeping count.
The funny thing about those people is that, like, who cares what you think? And it's like, you literally went out of your way, come to this video, post a comment, which gives the video engagement, which is positive for the content creator, basically, to basically tell the content creator that you don't care. That's almost like running into there's a random person in the street, like 800 meters away from you, and you made it a point to run over to that specific person that I don't care about you. Like, apparently you do.
Then, like, hand them $5. And then it's like, I don't care what you think. Here, let me help your day out and your career out a little bit.
One of the biggest surprise to me was because, like, you know, we spoke, I asked you if you could do a video because to me, having conversations is more interesting than doing reaction content. I usually do reaction content because I don't have a possibility to speak with that content creator or whatever. So if you weren't able to do it, I could potentially react to your video and tell people about it.
You can still react if you want to. Like, it's I like reaction content is a weird thing because it does hurt the content creator. Everybody was like, "Oh my gosh, Asmon's reacted." I'm going to follow the Josh Strife Hayes model. That's what Josh actually told us to do. Just react back. But like Asmon's reactions hurt my channel and content. So I'm just going to react back to it. But I enjoy being reacted to. Like, it's like I just don't worry about the numbers. I enjoy that aspect to be able to kind of see somebody kind of take those parts of apart. But I do agree with you. I love having conversations.
Yeah, having
more than reactions.
Like, I don't have like a strong stance on like, oh, should they react? I would prefer if people would react if they want to react to something that I do. To me, that's funny because, you know, we can all have back and forths and all of this, but conversations to me are much more interesting. So I was like, I'll just see if he wants to chat, and if he wants to chat, we'll just have a conversation. That'll be cool. So one of the things that surprised me the most, because I've been seeing other people's reactions, and one of the things that surprised me is I see on other people's communities, people that are like glad that they're like, "Oh yeah, I never liked him anyway. I don't like this guy." And I was like, "What?"
Oh yeah, people don't like me.
I was not aware of this at all, and I'm just so surprised because, you know,
they've bullied my wife. They've threatened my life. They've like we're not joking around. Like when I say and when I like and I've now had just this level of fun in trying and going on my way to piss them off so that they would eventually like. And then what happens is, this is usually what happens, is that after that aspect, like it's the reality of like, I could give two shits about my reputation. I really care more or less about my character, and people who know me know my character. Exactly. They don't care about my reputation.
That's the thing.
So I've gone above and beyond to try and do that, because what it does is it creates this interesting dichotomy in terms of how people actually speak. So there's a lot of people who don't like me because they don't know me. They've never seen my content. They've just heard from somebody who's mad that Brian thinks that Final Fantasy XIV could be better, right? Like just that aspect that somebody is triggered by that mindset. And then they're like, "Oh, I've heard awful things about this guy." And then what I get a lot of is this, and I don't know if there's a percentage that I could say kind of trickles into it, but typically people come in and says, "I've heard such bad things about you, but hanging out with you on Discord and playing games with you, like you're a solid guy." I'm like, yeah. Now, do you question the source that you're getting this information from, and do you start to kind of see the problem that was that is present? Now, it's not an exclusive thing to Final Fantasy. Like, there's plenty of communities within gaming out there that have these just weird, like I haven't yet in my mind when I start, like, I'm still doing, because I don't get the data points that I want. But I do start to wonder if this is tied into more social media, where when you can't have a discussion with somebody and have a disagreement about a game, especially a game, like we're at the end of the day, we're talking games, but if you can't ever come to a conclusion to agree to disagree, like we're seeing more and more of that. And from the studies that I'm seeing, it actually is tied into social media, where people feel it, like they're always having to be on the attack, and like, and that's just personal concerns that I have, but that's what I kind of relate to. So I always like to see, and I respect a lot of people when they go above and beyond and actually like jump into Discord and hang out and play games. And it's like, yeah,
it's just the weird thing about me was, for starters, I wasn't aware that it was that bad that they had bullied your wife. Like that is just complete bullshit behavior. And if anyone out there is like going out of their ways to bully like a content creator, like if you want to bully the content creator to an extent, it's like we're public figures, we're expected to be able to take the brunt of some abuse.
I've always been fine with it, but Julie doesn't play Final Fantasy anymore. Like, but it's like she's done. Yeah.
So wait a minute. So they bullied her in game?
Yeah. This was right before they made the policy change in game. And one of the nice things about the policy change in game, like that's why like I saw a lot of people calling it like, oh, Square Enix is going woke because they're like restricting freedom of speech in game. And I was like, no, they're not. Like my wife will not play this game anymore because she was playing and people were just giving her like absolutely, and we would report people, but nothing ever happened of it. Back, like there is a hard line in the sand point. So I've actually always been very happy with that mindset because I know firsthand just that it's like if we've seen that same level of bullying spill out into the online world in terms of Reddit and things like that, I'm fine with it living there. You don't have to go and engage with that. Like but if you're playing the game, if my kids are playing the game, like I don't want them to run into that level of stress, right?
So I'm sorry. It's like the first thing that I found very surprising was, like I was saying, I was watching like Asmongold's reaction and I think Zepla's reaction. I don't remember if in Zepla's was the same
today.
Thing. But
I don't know. Yeah, I haven't seen them yet. Don't spoil it because that's tonight.
I'm just saying that some of the people in that community, because like they'll read some of the comments that people will make, and some of the people are saying like, "Well, good, I never liked him. He's a bad person." Blah, blah, blah. Like all of these things, and I'm just like, who are you people? Like, because I've had conversations with you even like outside of creating content and stuff. Like we've talked about content creation, just life in general. And I'm like, who are you people talking about right now? Like, what is going on? Like, who is this person that you've created in your head? Like, this is not Brian. Yeah. I know Brian. I mean, we don't know each other in real life, but it's like, I feel like I know enough that it's like, this is a completely different person that you're talking about. It's just one of those situations where you end up saying something that somebody doesn't agree, like you were talking about in social media, and all of a sudden it's one big mess. Like you remember the very first time that we collabed, I even felt the need to tell you ahead of time about that healer video that I had made where I got a bunch of hate from like, I think it was, people have told me that it was like shitpost XIV or whatever. And there was just a bunch of people went in there and they went and looked at like my first current content rate of Shadowbringers that I had ever done. And they pulled that information up to tell me, dude, learn how to do better than a gray parse before you talk about healing. It's like, Jesus Christ.
Oh yeah. Gatekeeping exists in any game, right? Like gatekeeping exists in any game, but it's this weird protectionist kind of mindset, which I've always found amusing because when you think about MMORPGs, like the nature of them is to change, but yet like there is, and the thing is like, I see some of this in Destiny. I see some of this in these different communities, but 14 in my mind is always just slapped differently in terms of that.
And I'll be real. I kind of feel like I myself have gotten to a certain extent, I think maybe during the height of Shadowbringers or something, I myself felt like I might have done some of that in some of my reactions, and I'm not sure that I'm okay with. In particular, there's one video that I did, which was a reaction to a World of Warcraft player that played through Shadowbringers, and he just took a dump all over the game. And there are a lot of things that I said there that I still agree with the stance that I took, but I was like, maybe I was a little bit too harsh, maybe even somewhat vitriolic in that video where I didn't need it to be. So I found myself being in that position a little bit as well. And at some point I do intend to talk to that content creator in person and apologize a little bit for that. Like not everything that I said. I just feel like you need to disagree in a bit more respectful way than maybe be as aggressive. Like I said, I've made this mistake, but it's like, it's up to people to recognize and not let things go too far. It's not like I was threatening his wife or like taking it like that. As I even said, like, listen, whatever you do, do not like go harass him. Whatever you do, do not like do anything nasty. Like zero. I completely disavow any type of behavior like that because I think it's bullshit. But one of the things that I found in 14 is like generally inside the game, the community is outstanding. At least that's my experience. Outside of the game, though, outside of the game, though, it's a little bit of a different experience when it comes to the community. That's one of the things that I've found.
Yeah. And I think it's perfectly fine to defend like Final Fantasy, right? Like my whole approach is always, and still even to this day, like I will continue to defend it in terms of education, right? Like typically when I see that kind of things, it's like somebody states something that it's like they don't understand either the context or why this decision was made. And it's not that they need to like agree with the take. It's like, oh, the reason why that's the way that it is because of X, Y, and Z. And we know that because, 15 years ago, this was decided and this was this impact, etc. So my view of a game's defense is usually just in the forms of education. Like, well, why is it that way? It doesn't mean that we can't make that better, but let's just all be on the same page as opposed to like saying that this is garbage. That's why one of the things that was most disappointing about Lazy Peon when he took down his Final Fantasy review is that I believe every bit of critique and feedback is actually just building out a profile for the reviewer. So in Lazy's case, like when he took it down, it's like, oh man, like that just tells me that he didn't, in my mind, stand by like his words in the way that like I think he was fine and perfectly within his rights to do so. Because when you go and you listen to his content, what is he looking for in an MMO? And it's these several things. And Final Fantasy XIV does not check those boxes. Just because somebody like myself enjoys the story of Final Fantasy XIV doesn't mean that's the pinnacle of the game. It's my pinnacle, but it doesn't necessarily mean we have to gate check everybody to say you have to adhere to these standards. Same concept with a raid. Like a lot of people are like, oh, he just doesn't like hard content. No, I do hard content a lot. Like I play difficult games a lot. I don't like trying to schedule with 7 other people.
Yeah, that is the biggest challenge.
As an adult with like if I wasn't married, then it's a non-issue. Like scheduling, okay, cool, show up, right? Like what else are you doing tonight? But it's the same concept, like the same critique that I've leveraged at New World specifically. It's like, no, I'm not interested in doing war in terms of, yes, war sounds like a lot of fun, but it's at 7 Eastern. There's no way in my life am I going to sit down and say, hold on, I know the kids need some diaper changes, but I got a war tonight, baby. No. Like,
it's
no,
okay.
No.
Just let those diapers just like marinate a little bit. It'll be fine.
No, not in this house. We got me and my boys cannot process gluten, and it sucks that they can't at this age. My gluten intolerance like developed in my 30s. So they like they want it. They want that gluten, man.
Yeah,
and
of course.
And if they get it, it is awful. Like it is like you're sitting here like, okay, we got to get the professional grade diaper cream out because it's like they'll get some real awful nasty rashes. And so if I ever like because and then the girls do gluten just fine, so it's like we have this weird split pantry of the boy food and the girl food. I don't know why it's by gender, it just is. And so sometimes the boys will get into the girl food and then we have to be like on point so that they don't end up getting hurt, in this regards.
And it's just another thing that basically conditions the amount of time that you have to create content. And I've always said, like, you're a friggin' content machine. Because even though you have 5 kids and all this stuff, you're still able to produce much more content than I am. So I don't even know how you do it as much as you do already. But, it makes sense that if a game isn't giving you, like, what you want, for you just like, you know what, I'm going to step out of this and it's all good. And I think that in your case, because a lot of people will be like, well, who asked? Who cares? All of this stuff. It's like, well, in your case, I think it makes sense because you've been covering this game for how many years now? It's insane.
Well, I mean, technically you could say 15, but I say 13 plus. And it's not just coverage. Like I dream of this game.
Yeah.
Like I would go to sleep and literally be dreaming of the game and be in the game. And it was wild. Like it's a pretty crazy ride. But 13 plus because before it was Final Fantasy, it was Project Rapture. And so I was following that all this time, kind of like I even set up a site back in the day. Like I didn't know like what content creation was or anything like that. So it's kind of interesting to see like, oh man, imagine if I had continued this and built out a wiki or do all these different things. Like a lot of that would have been like interesting in retrospect, but No, like I've been, following the game. Like I started the podcast the day it was announced. I went out to like Guitar Center and bought like an M8 audio mixer, and like I was like, yeah, let's go. And it's like we're doing the podcast, and it was great. And then we got picked up by Curse, so it was just like this whole journey. And it's like, oh, cool, all these little started things, and eventually they kind of reach their natural end. And I think that's just essentially what this is, at its core.
I think for the people that were surprised that you quit the game, it was probably because they had a completely different misconception about the things that you were doing, which I was aware that you weren't. But like to put people to give an example, like what is your favorite type of content? Final Fantasy 14.
In Final Fantasy 14, I think Boja. That's essentially where I really enjoyed that. I liked
you
Eureka,
once told
but
me you didn't like Boja. I remember you telling me.
No, it was Eureka. Eureka moved me to Final Fantasy 11. So I was like, oh man, this is really, and then I was like, oh, Final Fantasy 11 does this better. But Bojo, I felt it was a really good blending of these systems, and it was really frustrating with Eureka because like the lost actions really didn't come into play until like the third tier, and by that time I was playing 11. Like by the time the third version of it, I was like, no, I'm having fun in 11. This is where I'm going to be. But no, Bojo was something that I thought was like really good content. The new PvP Crystalline Conflict, I think they knocked it out of the park.
Yeah,
really
it's
happy
really good.
that and then it's nice that that's also content that's not gated like at level cap, right? One of the things a lot of people are praising the Criterion Dungeons system, which I'm glad they added, but it's not going to be a system that the majority of people ever see, because we know that the biggest gate in this game is the MSQ. And so just like that with Island Sanctuary, a lot of people, it's like those pieces of content are for the people who are active, which isn't as many as people end up thinking. It's not a dig on the game. It's just knowing how people play Final Fantasy and realizing that a lot of people play for the expansion and then they come back for the next expansion. So that's just the natural flow of it.
And it's interesting that you say that you like Bozja, because I'm aware of the fact that you don't care for relics. You don't do any type of relic grinding whatsoever, if I remember correctly, right?
I got my first relic ever in Shadowbringers, and that's because I enjoyed the content in which that the relic actually was connected to. So I was actually, the fact that I got a relic was just the fact that I was enjoying the content. I wasn't grinding the relic. I was like, oh, check box, get progress. Like I love filling up as many bars at the same time as possible, right? Yeah. Anytime that I can fill up a multiple bars, baby. Like I'm leveling up, I'm making progress here, I'm doing this. Like there's a satisfaction in that efficiency, in a way that I approach it, etc. But the other thing I've actually enjoyed in 14 is actually turning off the mini map. Like I wish there was a compass tool. Like that's one of the things that I was like, I would love that option.
Kind of like ESO has a compass tool, I would imagine.
Yeah.
I don't remember if they have a mini map. Oh wait, no, just New World. New World has the compass and no mini map. Mine.
Yeah, well, it's like the thing about it I ended up finding in 14 is like it made the game in the world way more immersive, because it's like I kept finding like it's easy especially as an adult gamer to kind of really lean into efficiency mode.
Yeah.
And it was kind of nice to like kind of have that slow down a little bit. It's like, okay, I'm forcing myself to be an efficient and appreciate the design.
But it's like if people were aware that not only you don't care about relics, you don't do Savage. I'm assuming sometimes you might do Extreme, maybe in some Party Finder or something like that.
Like whenever I've done Savage whenever I've been invited into it, and done Extremes whenever I've been invited into it. But it never felt like a fun experience throwing myself against the wall for no rewards. And also rewards that expire. In that regards, it's that's always been my critique about vertical, the heavy-handed vertical progression. It's like, why invest my time into 14 in 0.0 to 0.4? Once 0.4 would hit, then it's like, okay, cool, this is going to be the gear score that takes you in. But you can also not play 0.4 or 0.5 and just come in and use poems to get to the gear score anyway, and then just proceed on. So it kind of felt like there was like, well, if and that's where ESGP is always like, if you're not having fun, take a break. And the only caveat to that, the only disagreement I have with that philosophy is the housing system in 14.
Yeah.
If you own a house, they're like, take a break, but don't unsubscribe. And And right now, I don't think the demolition's on, currently turned on, but it's still like, okay. All right, what are we doing here?
It's the housing situation was one of the reasons why I personally never owned a house when I initially was playing the game. I currently have an FC house. I wasn't even the one who bought the plot or the thing. I just like one day I logged in, and a couple of the friends that I play with on my static, they were all just like together saying, "Oh, we bought this plot and we're gonna put a house on it." It was like, that's great. Sure. But it's like in reality, I don't care that much about housing myself. I don't think it's super important. Like, sure, it's a neat thing to have where your friends like all congregate and stuff like that. But the way that I play the game is also very much like, I log in, I do the activities that I feel like doing. I'm someone who's always chasing after the gear. So I enjoy that aspect of it. And I'm currently doing savage rating and all of these things. But if I wasn't doing savage rating, I would probably, I'm going to piece it. I mean, not right now, because right now there's also the variant dungeon. So I'd be interested in doing that. But if there wasn't for those two things, I'd be like, I'll take a break. And then I'll come back whenever I feel like doing something else, which is why, like, when you said, "Oh, I'm quitting," I'm like, I'm not particularly surprised. And you've also been enjoying New World quite a bit. Do you think that the Omni 90 thing contributed a lot to you potentially? You said you didn't burn out, but I feel like you might have burned out. I feel like you might have burned out a little bit with the Omni 90. There's a reason I don't do that.
Burnout feels like fatigue. It feels like a slog. This feels like a joyful, satisfying conclusion. Omni 90 though, I wouldn't say it contributed a lot. It was just essentially kind of like when you start to measure, like, what am I really doing here? It's like, all right, like, okay, that was an achievement. Like if, like I said, like it's in my view, in terms of systems and game design, I'm looking for, like, does 14 invite me back into, another expansion, or down the road, a handful of expansions. Like, I don't honestly know that. But I would enjoy it. I would enjoy if 14 became the game that I wanted to kind of re-up and put another 10, 13 years into. But from what I've seen so far, that's just not going to be the case. And it's not 14's fault. It doesn't need to appease me. Right. So that's why a lot of the reaction to this seems like, it just seems like, shouldn't this be more of a celebration in terms of that? Like, Final Fantasy did something so incredible and has never been done before, that this is like, it's like, people ask me, should you play 14? Absolutely. Go enjoy it. Like, it has a satisfying conclusion. I think the conclusion was weak. Like, overall, like, there's things that I would have loved to see them do a little bit different. It felt a little bit, like they kind of chickened out maybe on some of the endings, but we won't talk spoilers here. Yeah. But at the end of the day, like, it still is a conclusion, like it had an ending to its story. So it's like, cool. But no, like, I don't think Omni 90 contributed to any kind of burnout. Cause again, I don't feel burnt out. I feel, in a way, satisfied, right? Like, where it's like, okay, like, I was trying to think of a kind of a really good, analogy that would kind of translate. It's like, you finished a job. Like, imagine you going into, any kind of career. Let's say you're going to build a building, right? And you build this building, but then you can't seem to, like, let it go. And so every day you keep going to that building, and maybe you move a light switch here or there. Like, it's like to the point where you're like, this isn't really healthy. Like, the project's done. Like, you finished the work. Go build another building. And so it's that's how I feel about it. In fact, actually making the video, like regardless, somebody was like, oh, you have so many dislikes. I'm like, I could give two shits. Like, I feel so at peace. Like, there's such a sense of joy and peace that it's like, that was great. Like, that was a great experience. I enjoyed making some people within the 14 Andy Defense Force community pissed off, because, like, it's, that ended up becoming like my own little, a little enjoyment in it, because nothing I shared in those videos was not true. It was my thoughts, my opinions, things that I've shared over the course of 13 years of this game. And at the same time, I just was like, well, I'm just going to lean into it, because I needed to create a trap. And so I was able to trap a lot of different, phrases and a lot of different Andys. So, like,
it was like, When I saw a lot of those videos that you were working on, the ones where we were specifically calling out the defense force, I was like,
Yeah.
oh, he's gonna get so much crap over this. This is insanity. Because
Yeah.
people don't, a lot of times, and this is not just the Final Fantasy 14 thing, is just a lot of times people do not know how to agree to disagree, which is like, for instance, you were talking about you thought the conclusion this week is like, I don't necessarily agree with that, but that's, I can understand why you look at it like that. And, I think that different people are going to have a different experience with the story, and it's whatever. But I do feel like, as a whole, this
That's
community...
why I say Graha is the best.
He's my favorite character.
Oh, cool. I was like, if you don't like Graha, we're done.
Yeah, he's my favorite character. Graha. Like, listen, I have 2 Palicos in Monster Hunter, which are these little cat minions that help you out. One of them is called Grahatia. The other one's called Ishtola, because I was just like, well, it's a cat. I can't name it like one of the other characters. Ishtola's not like my second favorite character, but it's like whatever.
Who's your second favorite character?
I don't know. I never really thought too much about that. I'd have to think about it for a while.
Yeah,
I can't give you an answer on that right now. But
I'd
basically,
say
Louis Soix is a really good character. When I first went into Coils and I saw what had happened, you see that cutscene, I was like, holy crap, this is insanity.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's just like I just wanted to have the conversation with you and, hash out all of these things because it's more interesting than a reaction. Hopefully this will give more context to people as well. And if anybody, tells you like, oh, Brian's this bad person, blah, blah, blah. It's like, listen, in my book, that's all a bunch of bullshit. These people don't know you, and these people are fucking wild. They're just like, no, man, you're all crazy.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that that's something that exists so strongly, within, I guess, the online space. And you could kind of track it back to any number of like kind of core issues within, just how people perceive information, how they learn to talk about things. That's why some of the research that I've seen, especially in terms of social media, is that how it actually impacts brain development especially in females, but more than anything else, it's making people like way more aggressive. And it's like, it's all about basically it isn't about a discussion. It's about what can you do to shut down the other voice. And that's where we see that heavily within gatekeeping. That's why, like, outside of you can say whatever you want about Final Fantasy or any game. Just be sure to be true. It at least needs to be true to you. The thing that drives me nuts is when I would hear people say like, oh, Final Fantasy 14, it's this. It's like, well, have you played it? No, but I heard from somebody and so that it's this. Like, well, maybe you should check it out before you start like propagating that information. And maybe it is that, but like, go and feel it out for yourself. Speaking of which, like, it's got this incredible free trial. So you can verify this without any cost to you. It's like it's just the cost of downloading the game and creating an account and just stepping into the world. And then you could see if that is in fact true. And I wish more and more people would, I don't know, just try to verify the information and the sources that they get. A lot of people are just like, oh, yeah, go ahead.
That's one of the things that as a content creator, I find it very important that whenever I'm talking about a video game on like a consistent basis, it is important for me to at least play that game to a certain extent to understand if there's actually something wrong with it or not. Like, I'm going to be playing the latest World of Warcraft expansion, Dragonflight, because I'm very passionate about World of Warcraft. Despite what's been happening to the game, I'm very saddened by what's happened to the game over the last couple of expansions, but I think it's important to play it. Like, I knew that Diablo Immortal was going to be absolutely terrible. I knew that I wasn't going to like it, but I didn't make a review on it before I actually played it. I played the game all the way, and then I was able to see, this game is bad because of this, and this. And I can specifically point it out. Without pointing it out, it's just like a lot of times people, I heard this thing on the internet, and therefore this thing is bad. It's kind of like the same thing. I heard Brian's a bad person, so therefore Brian is bad. And it's just like, it's kind of dumb and it's kind of stupid. And I think it's really dumb that people then go the extra mile to go to your other videos. And I'm assuming some of those people like commenting on your New World channel are going like, traitor and things like that. Because
I haven't seen any of like the traitor aspect of it, but I have seen like, hey, I've reported your channel. I've reported you and things like that. And I'm like, all right. Like,
why?
Okay,
'Cause like,
that's what they do, and it's like,
but the
okay, cool.
interesting thing,
They've tried to cancel me a few times and unsuccessfully so far. We'll see if that ever holds up. That's why, like, I made a joke and they were like, oh man, and then there was some like, people are just so pissed. It's like, that's why you don't get my stand up on the internet. Like, you're gonna have to come to the show. If I get any really good filming audio, crowd work or whatever, like I'll be willing to post crowd work because it's more of a dialogue. But it's like, in terms of like the jokes and the dark humor and like where I take people, no, you don't get that. You don't get that. And the reason is because I made one joke and everybody got offended, and it's like,
and
okay,
here's
cool.
the thing.
Like, it's like, there we go.
I need to make sure we get this. I don't know if you're up for doing this or not, but like, listen, I know for a fact that Asmongold is like, this is killing me. What is the joke? He doesn't know what, and he was just like, throughout your whole video, he was just going like, what's this joke?
I guess he has to find the video.
Oh, you're not gonna say? You're not gonna reveal?
No, you can go find it. You can go find it. There's also like I've stepped into it in terms of live streams. So I've told people I've done some of my stand up on live streams.
Yeah.
Because it's also more dialogue and there's people in the room laughing, like in chat, etc. So it's like, no, like we're not getting canceled today. So it's like, y'all can go find it and decide for yourself.
Yeah, but it's like the whole trader aspect is something that I've seen in other communities as well, where like if you cover a game that is like in the same wheelhouse as a game that you're known for, so to speak, but it's not the same game, a lot of times people do come in and they're like, traitor, can't believe you've backstabbed your community like this. Like, no, dude, you just got sometimes just move on.
That could also be a part of the filter. So who knows? Maybe they are saying things like that. Again, like the reception that I've seen on my videos has been overwhelmingly loving, overwhelmingly like, thank you so much for getting me into this game. Thank you so much for making it accessible. I don't have use of my left hand, and being able to play on a controller, allows me to do more things like that. And it's like, okay, great. Like, that was the goal. Like, and it's, in my mind, it's never been about me. I've been more than direct and more than like honest about my view of my role. And I fully understand, like, most people follow a creator for the game. And I actually specifically kept Final Fantasy XIV content off of Ginger Prime for well over a year. And I only decided to bring it on to that channel, after just after a while. I was like, you know what? Okay. Like, I do these controller guides. I'll go ahead and do Shadowbringers and Endwalker over here. So I put all that together and put it up on the channel. And then essentially, Final Fantasy XIV players started following me over there, but then they don't watch any of the other videos where like I was covering Outriders and I was covering Anthem and I was covering Phantasy Star. And it's like, essentially then all of a sudden you start seeing, like, unless I post Final Fantasy, nobody watches anything else. And so it's like, okay, cool. That's why I moved it off to its own thing. And then I was able to actually see what my value is, like how much in terms of my, like what I do, like, like how much I'm putting thousands of hours into this. What does that translate to as opposed to anything else? Right. And it's never been about the money, but it was a really good thing to see in terms of that. Okay, I'm putting thousands of hours and I get $40. Okay, cool. Like, that the Final Fantasy XIV community does not show up for their content creators, and this is something absolutely known within the 14 creator community, to the point where, like, if people really understood how bare bones and like hand to mouth, like it was for, not for me and not for Chris, but for you name any content creator, you'd understand why you see so many people that used to be well known not posting anymore. Like, it comes down to, like, I have to go survive, people. Like, this is not a tenable, and it is something realistic solution.
And it is something that people push back on. Like, cause I've made this point in one of my videos. I don't remember exactly which one, but I did make that point where it's like, listen, most people that I think it must have been in the Pyromancer video where I specifically said, listen, most people that start creating content for Final Fantasy XIV, like, people will follow them for a while they're going through the story and all of this stuff. Mm-hmm. And then after that, they just go back to the other content creators that they usually watch. like you know, Zepla, Zeno, and there's more people. I don't you know, I'm not going to list
No, we're
every
good.
single person.
Yeah.
But it's like
Happy,
it,
yeah.
it does have that effect where the community will watch a, you know, an up and coming content creator for a while, and then they'll just go back to the other ones and never go back to. Which is why at one point I had planned on making like a dedicated Final Fantasy XIV channel, and very quickly I was like, no, this is not a good idea at all. Because like I was doing all of this content that people say that they want to watch, which is content talking
And then
about
they don't watch it.
talk about the patches, talk about this part of the story, talk about all this, you know, content about all the things about the game. And then nobody watches because they just go back to the. And I'm not saying anything bad about the original content creators. Completely the opposite. I love watching them as well. But it's just like the community definitely does not go out of their way to watch up and coming content creators. And I think that a lot of the people who think that that is not true are living under a rock. Like
It's sorry. We call it the classic Final Fantasy XIV rug pull, and it sets a lot of these young up and comers up for failure. And that's exactly like with Pyromancer. A lot of people think like, oh, you were tagging. I was like, I literally go to watch the videos. I'm defending the guy and I'm talking about the reality of content creation, and said like, we literally were like, Chris and I remember we're sitting down talking. We're like watching his rise. And I was like, gosh, I wish he knew what's about to happen to him in terms of like what's going to happen once he finishes the story. And then what happens is that he then has a Pyromancer classic, you know, explosion. And that is already encompassing like the numbers that he's already seeing just absolutely just dip out once he's finished the story. And so now he's got kind of two opposing forces working against him. The other thing that I even told Chris about it was weird because it's that it's kind of like, do you remember kind of the Boogie situation that happened a couple years ago where
a
like,
little bit.
So to kind of sum up this is like, I was like, this kind of feels like Final Fantasy XIV's version of it, is that on stream, Boogie is a different person than he is in his videos. His videos are curated, right? Like you can edit those things, etc. On stream, he's got a dirty sense of humor. You know, and the thing is that both of them are who he is, but he developed his reputation on YouTube as kind of being this dad figure. And because then that got set into the mind of everybody, all of a sudden these clips of him telling dirty jokes or just telling just awful, like really shocking jokes, etc. And I'm using jokes. People might not classify them as jokes, but ultimately in his mind, he's thinking he's just being ridiculous and being controversial, etc. But that had a weird parallel. And so like one of the things that I think was interesting that I was talking with Chris about, I was like, well, when you go look at Pyromancer's YouTube page, it's very curated. But then you go look at his streams and his clips and like, I'm not making these clips. People are literally making these clips, talking about these clips. And what I do and have done for years is comment on what's going on within the community. Yeah. People are like, you're making dramas. Like I literally am just over the drama's happening. People are asking me about it. And then I go and I always try to present it with what I call, you know, like context and, you know, compassion. It's like, okay, like guys, like here's the stressors that that you might not be aware of. You know, when you're a content creator, unfortunately, you are aware of what the numbers mean, and those can stress you out because the bigger the number goes up, the more opportunities are becoming available for you. So you don't have to rely on the generosity of a handful of people. Like in the 14 community, especially like for us, like is insanely generous with like their time and their money. But in terms of volume, like we're talking about like 1% of like our community has that ability to financially support, which gives us the ability to make more content. You know, that's what that always translated into. Any money that we make would always be reinvested back into the channel. And it's like, that was how we kind of said, thank you. But in the grand scheme of things, it's like, when you have a higher number, that opens you up for sponsorships, which sponsorships can actually take the lion's share to actually then not have to sit here and kind of feel like you're hand to mouth as much.
Yeah.
And still, even within MMOs, it's not like there's like a mile long of, you know, different sponsors like coming out of the woodwork to say, yeah, we know your niche.
Yeah.
let's talk about Manscaped.
But yeah, it's funny to then also, you know, sometimes you see some Reddit posts going like, oh, why don't we have more content creators in this community? And it's like, well, because you don't watch them. And also, just to kind of like wrap things up, if you I know I've already said it, but I really do need to drive this point home. If you harass a content creator's significant other, man, just like fuck you. It's just like that's all I gotta say. But anyways, I'm gonna be calling it here. Any final words, Brian?
No, thanks so much for sitting down and talking with me, man. It was it's always
Dude, it
great
was my pleasure. I'm glad you could make the time.
Oh, dude, this is the best time. No one needs me. No, like that's why I'd get up at this hour and be like, no one needs me to change a diaper. No one needs me to do whatever. It's quiet. I can sit down. I can work on. I can write the script. I like being uninterrupted, but you don't get that a lot as a parent. But yeah, it's like I'm going to take that this time. I'm going to invest it in my health, because then that's going to allow me to be a part of my family. I think essentially kind of to address one of the common other things that I've seen pop up a little bit is that people are like, oh, you're like, how are you getting more time for your family if you're going to play New World? It's like, I was playing New World. I was playing 14. I literally am not playing 14.
Yeah.
That immediately gives me more time. New World is very organic. So it's like, it doesn't have that same level of requirement that I have to like always be grinding. I can go and play when I can play. And typically I get maybe 6 to 8 hours of game time a week.
I think.
Yeah. And so then I get to kick back and put it into New World and have a good time.
I think that the problem with New World is that it suffers from the exact same effect that we were talking about where a bunch of people took a dump on it very early on. So now everybody just has this incredibly negative connotation of the game. And it's like, don't get me wrong. There was definitely a lot of stuff wrong with the game when it released. There still is some things that I consider to be wrong with the game now, but this definitely been improving significantly to the point where it's like, $40 for New World. I'm like, that's not a terrible investment. There's definitely problems there, but I've definitely gotten more out of it. Even back when it released, I've definitely gotten more out of it than, I've spent, even though they didn't fulfill promises, and there's things there that we can talk about. But it's just this notion that people have that like, oh, because you play this game, our game is better. It's like, well, yeah, but I've played your game for 13 years. Like, I've played that game and I want to play this one, and people have a problem with it. So yeah,
it's really sad. Like, and not in the sense that they're sad. It's really sad that that's some of the reaction. That's why I was like, the reaction I've seen has been all positive. The reaction that I've seen and people have kind of shared with me that has kind of trickled up it's kind of like, yeah. And so people, they're trying to go out of their way to convince me of something that's not true. And it's like, okay, like when I've stated these things for 13 years, when Final Fantasy XIV had these things that I liked and they've gotten rid of those things, like, I understand. I'm not going to sit here and, and say that it's a bad game because they didn't appease everything I want. No, that's not true. But ultimately, it's like, if I like these things and a game is delivering those things, well, do I really like those things? And it turns out, yeah, I really do. Like a player-driven economy. I absolutely love it. No, 14 doesn't have it. 14 has more of an MO light, kind of economy. There is trading. Player economy does not mean trading. Player economy means that if you go do the raids, instead of the raids just giving you that dopamine hit of here's your reward, they give you materials that you then go. And that's a kind of a Monster Hunter kind of thing. Like, like that's what I was like, oh, cool. You don't actually you got to go get the materials and then you go craft up the thing, the reward. Yeah. And so like, there's this level of satisfaction. The thing is that a player driven economy changes the culture, and a raid focused economy, like, where the drops are, the best gear is in, and at the toppest tier, it changes the culture. And that's one of the things I enjoy about New World. It's got a player driven economy. We can craft best, best. Not easy. It's not like people are like, oh yeah, well then, it's like, no. Like, people don't understand what a player driven economy is. And that's unfortunately sad. And it's not that a player driven economy makes the game perfect either. There are issues with the player driven economy. We know bots, we know like gold sellers, like those are things that you have to fight against. And that's why, like, I understand why games don't do it, because it requires a lot. But then at the same time, I don't understand why people buy gold in Final Fantasy XIV. Like,
yeah, this is just completely insane.
Like, what? Like, why?
Are you crazy?
And people do, and it's like, it's there again. It's like, okay, like,
it's like, look,
why though?
I actually suck at making gold in MMOs. It's one of my biggest flaws. I'm terrible at making gold in MMOs, and I have like 40 million in 14, and I haven't even tried. I'm not even trying. I'm
Yeah.
just like, yep, I just got 40 million. It's like,
I would always get up to like 10, and then I either go on a shopping spree or I'd give it away. I think I've given away more gil than
yeah.
than
Oh, yeah,
anybody. But who knows? Maybe that's wrong. Maybe that's right. Like I know that like I would. Yeah.
Even with 40 million, like I've given at least like 15 million away or something to friends and just
Chris
people
has
that I
given
knew.
a ton away because we do that as a part of like people who like when we hit follower goals or subscriber goals on Twitch, we'll start handing out lots of gil to sprouts and stuff like that. Just things that kind of make it fun and enjoyable. So yeah, that's just kind of what I would like to say. I really appreciate the opportunity to come and hang out, and I always enjoy talking with you, dude. So
I appreciate
if anybody is like, saying like, hey, well, I think if you've never played Final Fantasy and for some reason you've made it to this point of the video, you should absolutely give it a shot. It's definitely worth it. It's got the best free trial out there on the market to date. No MMO, I think, has a better free trial for what it offers. And I feel very happy having spent this time with the game. And like I said in the video, like I would, if 14 wants to invite me back in at some point in the future, I'm always willing to check it out. And then, I'm going to like I told Chris, is like, we can still cover live letters, like I have experience. I'm just not going to be giving you guys my hands on, thoughts about anything. I'll just have questions at some point, and maybe that doesn't, maybe at some point that means that another change will be coming down the pipe, but until that day, we'll see what happens when that happens.
Yep. So, guys, there's going to be links to Ginger Prime in the description of this video. I'm assuming Ginger Prime's still like the main channel where you do all the things, right? Yeah, because like you guys need to understand, Brian has like 50 channels, so I need to keep keep up to date with that. But
I got a couple new ones I've been working on that are fun, so we'll see.
Yeah, but make sure to check them out, and that's going to be it from us. We'll see you guys in the next one. Stay strong, stay safe, peace out.